Hey, everybody. We are so excited you decided to come and spend your evening with us. And we are just really excited about what we're going to learn from you and hopefully how we're going to help you become more a part of Texas Freedom Colonies Project as we go into this next phase of our work. So I want to start though first by introducing the team. So we'll start with Natalie and then go from there.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalie Franz. I'm the Assistant Director of the Texas Freedom Colonies Project.
Hi everyone, my name is Van. I've been with the Freedom Colonies since 2020.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Blanks. I'm a PhD candidate and I've been working with the Texas Freedom Colonies Project. Wow, I think since 2018 or 19.
And my name is Hannah Bowling. I'm a doctoral student and I've been working with the Texas Freedom Colonies Project since 2021.
All right. And so one thing to understand about Texas Freedom Colonies Project is that we're a team. We are a team of researchers. And what we're going to do is sort of talk to you first about what we're doing, what's going to stay the same, what's going to change as we look at this transition that I'm going through personally from Texas A&M University to University of Virginia. So I want to go ahead and start then with just reviewing who we are, what our focus is, and what it's always been since 2014. We've been a statewide educational social justice initiative dedicated to preservation of Black settlements, landscapes, heritage, and grassroots practice through participatory research. So we connect and collect placemaking and placekeeping stories and histories. We counter map, that means we make visible on normal maps those places that we don't see enough of, and we secure that data for posterity and for use by researchers, and we co-create based on all that data and input applied research to support addressing the challenges and vulnerabilities of communities. So how exactly do we do all of that? We always try to find ways to bring the diaspora of descendants of these communities together, whether that be online or offline. We're always trying to bring together all of those people who are descendants and those who care about freedom colonies together. We very often hear from folks that they have not had enough opportunity to connect with other people who care about freedom colonies, and they're always thankful and excited about just finding ways to connect. We grow capacity and build community and co-research. So we're a learning community. We document places, landscapes, and structures, structures that are in trouble or endangered, that are special, that are historically significant, that tell the story of historic Black settlements. And we assess the current conditions of these places. And we'll have one of our team members talk more about the cemetery registry as one example of that. And we look for solutions from below. And that simply means rather than looking at the very top or where we usually look for solutions and data, we try to reach those folks who maybe are not as visible, maybe don't have all the expertise or the letters behind their names, but they have valuable knowledge that can help us make these places visible. We're real focused on that. And of course, a way that we do that is through our Adopt a County volunteer program and our YouTube channel. And we'll talk about each of these in a little bit and how they'll still be available to you to work with as we move forward. Next. So I do want to go into this to make very, very clear what kind of organization we are. We're not a nonprofit with a team of folks that work on this work full time. I am a tenure track professor, a full-time professor that sits on master's and doctoral committees and teaches and does all the things a professor has to do full time. The students do all the things that you have to do as a student full time, right? And they do Texas Freedom Colonies Project. So these are impressive people, right? And again, the way we do our work is with these research goals in mind, but we're always committed to how are we doing our work in a way that furthers or makes more visible and serves the descendants of freedom colonies while also trying to achieve these research goals. So we're trying to do both at the same time with these principles in mind. We want representativeness. We want to make sure we're doing our best to listen to stakeholders and to reflect that in the way we do our work, what we prioritize, what we focus on, as much as we can, considering we're researchers. Cultural humility, understanding that we're not aware of or understand the nuances and the significance of cultural traditions and practices in these communities. And we're in a learning posture, and we have humility about that. We value local knowledge. We value where you say something is and what the name of it is. We do a lot of triangulation. That is, how do we know something, right? We take in a lot of data, and we're always trying to do three things. How do we know this place is African-American? What can we date the remaining structure or landscape feature back to? Can we date it back to 1865 to 1930? And how do we know that this place actually existed between that period? And is it African-American? And is there a remaining something there? And so we're using all types of information from you, from public archives, from personal archives to get the answer. We work with communities to define shared goals, and we center people and their stories as much as we can in all we do. And we allow space for new definitions of place and historic significance. So if you're looking for us to be the type of authority that simply repeats and does things in the ways that most people do them, you're not in the right place. Because what we're trying to do is bring the resources we have of the university forward for the purpose of descendant communities and for contributing knowledge, right? And one of the ways that we believe we have to do that is to allow space for new definitions of what makes a freedom colony and what makes a place matter or not. We have laws that tell us what the answer to those questions are, but they actually don't always serve freedom colonies. So we have to have new eyes, new ways, and really push for reforming the way that we define and think about freedom colonies to make sure the voices of descendant communities are heard. And impact. So what is the point of all this? Great, so we have a map, we have information. What have we been able to do? Well, we have a list of names of places. 357 of them have been fully verified with public resources and on-the-ground research. And we have several more, nearly 100 more than that, that we've been able to verify with your help. That's from public input. We have 675 unique locations. We have 430 locations that we fully verified total, more than that, as you'll see. 101 plus crowdsourced narratives. Crowdsource simply means we got it from the crowd, from you all. And several settlements that weren't on our original list, but that you introduced to us. What's been the impact? We've been asked to be what's called a consulting party on new infrastructure projects. So rather than us looking at this big project over here, maybe it's Independence Heights, or maybe it's this particular instance, and we run from emergency to emergency, and we have people fighting alone for their communities in the face of new infrastructure projects. What we've been able to do is put ourselves down as a proxy for all freedom colonies in the state. Not to say that they don't consult with other people, but when they can't find anyone, we try to stand in the gap in these public projects to let them know about the existence of freedom colonies. And now they are citing and using our atlas when doing this planning. So they have less excuse to say that they have not seen or not aware of the existence of freedom colonies and their assets. We've helped people get historical markers and historic designations. We've helped people in other states. We've made visible ways that we can use our research model in other communities. So Virginia has used it to used our model and way of defining freedom colonies to make their settlements, to make arguments for their historic significance and protect them from new landfills that were supposed to be built next to historic Black settlements. And so they've been using some of our methods and approaches in our scholarship. And we've been able to make our methods apply to looking at cemetery preservation. And it's specifically starting to look at that in places where there are a lot of hazards and environmental injustice. For example, Cancer Alley. Next. So here's where we started. When I began doing this research, one of the things that I did was listen. Once I began to meet a lot of folks and they told me what their priorities are, we started with these ideas. These are from historic African-American settlements. We started with centralized location for information and communication among descendants, partnerships with the institutions of higher learning, developing a learning community with annual meetings and a symposium, provide practical assistance, preserve heritage memorabilia, be an economically sustainable organization for freedom colonies, and have a public policy and legislative agenda. I said to myself, because I had just graduated, I can't even begin to do all these things, and I'm not starting an organization. I'm trying to be a scholar, an activist scholar. So what is it that I can reasonably do? And what I found that I could reasonably do and teach other students to do is to develop the centralized location for information, help develop partnerships, and develop a learning community. Those are things we have done and that we can do and continue to do. Next. So I want to hand this over to Natalie as she begins to talk about this time where we answer the obvious question of, if Dr. Roberts is no longer in Texas physically, what is going to change and what's going to stay the same? Because I know this is the basic question. We have some answers, but not all the answers, which is why we need you. Natalie?
Sure. You know, I try to think of things from a forward-facing perspective, since I see a lot of names on the attendee list that I recognize, and I'm fortunate to get to talk to folks about the project. And a lot of the things that you see when you use the project will remain much the same. The Atlas should remain online without any interruption in service. Submitting information to the Atlas will not change. The website and educational resources will continue to be there without any interruption in service. Similarly, the Texas African American Cemetery Registry will continue to be there. And the Adopted County intranet, for those Adopted County volunteers out there, hello, the intranet will continue to function without an interruption in service. Things that will change is that we will be entering a transition period, roughly between June 1st and March 2023. And you'll see on the next slide kind of how that maps out a bit. And yes, the headquarters will be in Charlottesville, Virginia, but we'll have regular travel to Texas. And I'll just say I've been with the project only since COVID. And I know that things were different in the early going in terms of a lot of in-person events, but a consequence of COVID has been learning to do a lot from afar and without being able to see folks. So I think the project has gotten pretty adept at some of the virtual meetings and the engagement we can do virtually. So that will be taking more and more of a role during the transition time. Emails will take longer to answer, just as a practical matter. We'll try to get to it as quickly as we can. And finally, we'll need more volunteer support. And I know many of you are supporters of the Texas Freedom Colonies Project, but all of this is to say, the Texas Freedom Colonies Project will slow down for a time, but it will not stop. Okay, so here's a graphic that we made just to kind of visualize how things will change. You know, now we're working at 100% capacity. But as the summer months start to come on, you'll see that capacity begin to drop. Some of this is because our very talented students are not around as much in the summertime. And some of this is because Dr. Roberts is preparing for a pretty big change. So there's the logistics of that will be happening, moving the project to a new home institution, but also some rethinking of the best way to engage partnerships. And I know she'll speak to that more. And now I'll throw to Jennifer Blanks to talk more about the ways that we can continue to work together through this time, even though we'll be on a hiatus. So Jennifer.
Thank you, Natalie. So yeah, I will be explaining the different ways that we can connect and keep in touch during this transition and beyond. So our obvious way of doing that will be through the Atlas. We are still very much interested in collecting your stories, your oral histories, your archives, and information about freedom colonies. As you can see on our latest screenshot of the Atlas, we have now verified 430 of the 557 freedom colonies known in Texas. And we are going to continue to drive that number up until we reach the full count of 557 through your help in submitting surveys through the Atlas. And then also you're able to access our educational resources on our YouTube channel. I imagine we will still be producing information to upload here, but in the meantime, of course, dig through our coffee talks. If you haven't accessed those coffee talks, that was our biggest way of communicating with you all during the pandemic's early months. So I highly recommend you dig through and watch some of those videos. You can access our Saving Texas Freedom Colonies Guidebook. You can actually print off the pocket-sized PDF version of this document and carry it with you in your field, or just for you to study on your own and share with other folks who you want to share the Texas Freedom Colonies project with. And also access our other resources regarding Black land retention and Black land resources and heirs property, especially as we continue to build that out actively in the future. And then you can also volunteer to host a local event in your area, whether that be through your church or at a local community center. We can actually put together Texas Freedom Colony kits and resources. So just taking our digital resources and building out this kit for you, and you all being able to share it with your local organizers and events in your community. And so lastly, you can continue to engage with us through the Texas African American Cemetery Registry. This is a registry where you can document the condition of your burial ground or a particular grave plot in a cemetery in your freedom colony or an African American cemetery in general. It doesn't necessarily have to be a freedom colony. And also check out the cemetery preservation resources that are linked in the cemetery registry as well. And these resources include how to specifically care for African American burial grounds, how to navigate resources provided by the Texas Historical Commission, direct contacts with the Texas Historical Commission. In the event you have an issue that is beyond our scope, you have access to some key folks over at the THC who can help you with those concerns. And I will spin it back to Dr. Roberts and Hannah, who will lead the discussion with the Q&A.
Thank you. So my favorite thing about having done this work is to see all of the scholars that I've worked with grow and mature and become more sophisticated. And this project is only as successful as the students and the community members I work with. And so that's what's been most gratifying. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for being such an important part of this project and all that you've brought. And it's just been so exciting to continue to watch you grow. So I want to open up for a little bit of Q&A and discussion, but I do have to preface this with a few things. Number one, I'm not going to have answers. We're not going to have answers to all your questions. And that's the truth. And that's part of why I wanted to have this is because we had a meeting last week. And Natalie, do you mind going back to that arrow slide? I think that might be a good kind of gauge or way to kind of, tell people where we are and where we're going. That might be a pretty just for now. Yeah. So we met last week, and I had an idea about how we should go about talking about this. And then I talked to my team, and everybody had these great ideas. They were like, hey, Dr. Roberts, we've got to worry about communications. What's going to happen with this and this? And I was like, oh my God, I don't have those answers, but those are good questions. And then we all came to the conclusion that if we opened up the floor to you all, we would not necessarily have all the answers for you, but we would be able to develop a frequently asked questions based on your input from tonight. This is going to help us develop some information that we can make available to our supporters, descendant community, agencies, to know where we are and where we're going. And this will help us figure out what we need to answer, what's important to the public to answer, and also just give us ideas about where we should go next. Because what the future is not all in my head. It is really not. It is really about you all as well. So at this point, I do want Hannah to come on and to help me navigate some of the questions that have been shared. And at this time, the whole team, if you want to go ahead and come on camera, you're very welcome. It's not just for me. Everybody can come on camera, team members. Great. All right. So Hannah, what do we have?
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and kick it off. So we have a question from Rosalind asking, does your consulting party's status on new infrastructure projects have anything to do with TxDOT eminent domain taking?
So I can't speak to any specific project at all. What I can say is that TxDOT has made it a practice that when they are engaged in any one of their projects and they're looking at the location of that project and they determine that it's in any way next to or adjacent to a historic African-American place, landscape, structure, freedom colony, that they make sure we are notified and have a way to offer input. That's what it means to be a consulting party. We're letting people know we're consulting with people who are a party to this in the sense that they're people who care about this, okay? And so what that gives us an opportunity to do when there are open forums, there are events, we can make our voice known saying, have you considered that you can find some other descendant communities or some other individuals who might want to offer their input about this project? If you're having trouble finding them, maybe we can support that or help in some way, or just simply offer that we're concerned and we would advise that TxDOT try to find ways to continue to center the voices of descendants, to try to find ways to mitigate harm. So we can't tell TxDOT necessarily, hey, don't do this project. What it means to be a consulting party is to say, if you do the project in this way, there's a possibility you will endanger this community and your assets. And so we're advising that you find ways to mitigate harm in the way that you engage in this project. That's what it means. So when you speak of eminent domain or whatever project, I can say that we have not been introduced to any projects. There's not been any letters sent to us as consulting parties telling us we would like your input on this eminent domain project. That's not correspondence that we have received. So I can say confidently, unless Natalie, you've seen something else in the mailbox to a different effect about us being a consulting party on a project that involves eminent domain. If that's the case, and I'm missing it because you are the person who looks at our email box most often, please let me know. Is that the case?
It's not ringing any bells for anything specific to eminent domain, but yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so what I will say as well, and this doesn't have to do with an infrastructure project, but there's another eminent domain situation in East End and Freeport, Texas. And so that was a situation like, let's take it out of the TxDOT box. But that's another, you mentioned the words eminent domain, so that's what I'm keying in on now. So rather than us getting involved in that process, we did two things. Number one, we made sure all of the information about the historic significance of this African-American community was made visible on our atlas. Number two, we had a newspaper, a journalist who did a story on us, and we said, hey, by the way, here's another community that has some environmental justice issues and eminent domain issues, and maybe you want to check them out since that's your beat and your specialty. And lo and behold, they were featured in The Guardian, and no one was talking about their community before that. It wasn't getting any visibility. So often this raising of awareness piece that we do is the way that we as researchers and educators, can stay in our lane, but find ways to connect people to resources to push the envelope. Okay. So Hannah, next question.
Yeah, so we actually have a question for Natalie. Rebecca wants to know if you're staying with the Texas Freedom Colonies project and if you'll be based in Texas or in Virginia.
Oh, that's a great question, and that's very sweet of you to ask, Rebecca. I won't be going to Virginia. My continued work with the project will eventually transition to being one of the many great Adopt a County volunteers. But yes, I'll still be here in Texas.
I'm sorry. She'll still be here in Texas. That's a really good question. We are in a transition phase. So I want to point to this chart because when it comes to July 15th onward, everything gets thrown up into the air. So there is no, $200,000, $1 million endowment that floats Texas Freedom Colonies project. Doesn't exist. It is put together with bubble gum and rubber bands. Okay. And so when it comes to us being able to benefit from Natalie being a part of the team, that was a privilege. That's a benefit that we have, but she will go on to bigger and better things. There are already people talking at the university about other things you could do besides Texas Freedom Colonies project. So that's already taken care of and not an issue. What the issue is how I'm going to continue to do this work. And that is all up in the air, which is why we need all of you, because nothing is certain in terms of who will be working at what time and where and how. I want everybody to continue working with us forever. However, that's what this kind of team hiatus period is. It gives everyone enough time to decide how they want to continue to be involved, if they want to continue to be involved, what kind of support they need, so that no one is worrying about what they're going to do next, because my students come first for me. I think of them as people, not just people who do work for me. And so when it comes to staffing and who's going to be where and when, that's absolutely all up in the air. And so I can't sit here and say, oh, we've already planned it out. That's why we're being absolutely transparent with everyone and letting them know we need support, we need help, we need all types of manner of support and help to keep Texas Freedom Colonies going, especially as it begins to grow. But here's the thing, folks. We're not going to grow in a way that simply means we're going to copy everything we've just been doing and broadening it to the United States. We're going to pivot. There are going to be other pieces of this that people go off and do, and that they simply, borrow our name or something like that. I am just one person. Jennifer's one person. Natalie is, Hannah's just one person. And so we're really looking at, in conjunction with you all, what are we going to focus on? How are we going to focus on it? How do we want to narrow our focus so that we go broader and the appropriate amount of depth in proportion to broad? And that will mean rethinking things. And what does rethinking things take? Time. And I'm begging you all for the benefit and the privilege and the understanding of time. And those word team hiatus is time that I desperately need to take us to the next place we need to be. So I hope that answers a little bit of what's going on in terms of who's doing what and staffing. That's the best we can do at the moment.
Speaking of partnership, Dr. Roberts, Deidre has a question on partnership opportunities and their availability. She says partnerships for collaboration allow us to apply for local grants to host events related to information gathering in and about freedom colonies. Some of us are ag producers, defendant of freedom colonies, and we need funding to be able to be effective at outreach. For us, ag and freedom colonies are synonymous.
Okay. I can speak to that, but I would love for anyone else on our team, if you have comments about that, Natalie, about what that looks for us right now and how it might change.
Okay. You know, what I was thinking of was, you know, during the partnerships will still be available, but I think like everything else, you know, slowing down and some kind of you know, deep consideration about how to engage is something that Dr. Roberts has been talking with me about. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the, you know, kind of case study demonstration site things.
I think that I want to go to that what changes and what stays the same kind of concept. Is that if you need a letter of support for a grant, or you need help formulating your grant strategy, you need some verbiage to explain what freedom colonies are, how many are in your county. If you're writing about a project you want to do that involves cemeteries, we can talk to you a little bit about how to frame your arguments so that funders understand what you want and how to pinpoint those funds. Those are things that we're available to assist with currently. And we might be able to do those, but we will not be as responsive during this hiatus period. It will slow down. We will not answer emails as frequently. We will not be as Johnny on the spot, which is why we're trying to make sure everybody's real clear on this diagram here of the slowdown. The more volunteers we have, the less it slows down. That's kind of the trade-off. But what we're trying to make clear in terms of partnerships is, while I will be going back and forth between Virginia and Texas, I will be narrowing and making sure that when we do partnerships, it's so that we're doing a project that is an example that teaches other folks how to do the same thing. We can't, you know, we've never been an organization that just goes to this project randomly. It's about how do we make a case study example so that other people confronting the same issue or challenge can get an example of how to do it. We've started to do that, but we've only started. So this is something that we need time to refine. Case studies, organize kits, peer mentoring, all of that takes time. And it takes thoughtfulness and intention and consulting with descendants. That is what we're about to engage in. It will take time, however. So I'm not going to say overnight, by the way, oh yeah, I'm going to move and we're going to start this. That would be a lie. But what we are going to do is be very, very intentional about how we allocate our energy and our time as a team. Anybody else want to speak to that? Any other comments? No? Some of these parts of the project will grow. They will go in different directions. Like we have Jennifer who's doing the cemetery work, and that will grow and expand in all different types of ways. She'll still be continued to be connected to us and will collaborate in the future, but everything will grow and change. I'm really here to incubate and get them off out of the nest and to be their own grown-up researchers and scholars, right? And so everything is in influx, right? So that's just what I want you to keep in mind there. What's next?
So we have a question for some of the people that are new to this project. Is there a training session, Amaria wants to know, that I should be on the lookout for before the transition period begins?
Yes. There's two different ways we're looking at providing that material. more material will be automated that will teach you things. So for example, we will have to develop videos for folks rather than sending you an email and links and saying, go here, go there. We will have to develop short videos that say, this is how you use the atlas. This is how you use this resource or that resource. Mm-hmm. Now, as you'll see from the diagram here, through July 2nd, we're operating at a pretty full clip, right? We're up to 50% through July 2nd. And so between now and July 2nd, we're going to be having maybe 1 or 2 sessions in which we do a little bit of training. You can also schedule training with us. So for example, if you want to join our Adopt a County program and you would like to know, for example, how do I get a password so that I can store archival information in this intranet, in this safe space, while I organize it and while I take information out of it, maybe to put selectively in the atlas. So we can train you how to use that, how to utilize it, how to document and track that information. Often people throw their information in a folder, but we don't have names of the people in the photos. We don't have names of the files. We don't have dates. And so what we can coach you on is how to organize those files. We can coach you on how to use the atlas to locate particular types of information, how to add your information to the atlas. So we definitely have guidance, but one of the things we're looking at to do between now and May is have at least one Adopt a County / volunteer event where we go over using these resources. One of the most important things you can do is to make sure you're on our mailing list, on our newsletter list. And so I'm going to hand it over to you, Natalie, to speak to this as well and to provide the link in the chat for how they can sign up to join the newsletter list so that if you're wondering when the next event will be, you will know because we put it on our newsletter list.
Yes, I will put that in the chat. I'll also say for folks who are signed up for Adopt a County, we have a kind of separate section of the mailing list specifically with the purpose of notifying you of Adopt a County related things that we'll be using more in the next couple of months as we help to get everyone familiar with new resources that we have. If you are running into issues, you can always email us and you can always call us. As Dr. Roberts said, we're pretty well staffed for the next several months. So if you have a question, you can email or pick up the phone, whatever is your preference.
Now, speaking to this sort of hiatus period, Dr. Roberts, we've had a couple different questions about what Texas Freedom Colonies Project's presence will be. And so we have a couple of questions about, will we continue to maintain social media presence on Instagram and Facebook? And do we have merchandise that's available to purchase and will continue to be able to be purchased through the hiatus period? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah. Okay. So social media. So again, this handy chart is telling you when we get to July 2nd through 15th, where it says 35%, that means that we will be having a decline in frequency of adding new information to our social media because fewer people will be working. If we have a team of volunteers that want to do a social media, that want to sign up for social media takeovers for a month, then we'll have more, but we won't otherwise have as much social media. We will program, we will, set for particular weeks, different types of maybe themes for a while and program it ahead of time, but there's not going to be as much regularity because we will not have as many people working because I'll be living in boxes and my students will be finding more full-time positions. Things will change. That's why hiatus is happening. Otherwise, I would love everything to stay at 90 and 100. That's why we're talking to you. If you say, you know what, I want to take on maintaining your Facebook, I want to work on the Instagram, you send us a note and we work with you and figure out how you can step in the gap for us this summer and help us with those things. Otherwise, when you see those decreasing numbers, that means those things will slow down. Email responses will slow down. Responsiveness to your inquiries will slow down. We will not post as much on social media because everyone will be working fewer hours. So that is the change that is coming. It'll go down before it goes back up. Because again, we are revising, rethinking how we're doing everything going forward. I'll have a whole other team waiting for me in Virginia to develop. And so in the interim, where you see those big letters, team hiatus, that equals everything slows down, except for, and unless we get more of you to assist in the interim. That is the situation. That's the circumstance. As for gear, we've never been able to, frankly, spend a lot of money, a lot of grant money on swag, unless it has an educational value. Now, you can argue that t-shirts do, but if it's between t-shirts and paying a student to work for a month on a project, I'm gonna go with paying a student to work. There's management of our funds so that we're focusing on getting you those note cards that have ways to contact us and to use our atlas and to learn, and stickers in our Saving Texas Freedom Colonies booklet. We've always wanted t-shirts. We've talked about getting t-shirts. If someone wants to underwrite t-shirts for us, contact us and say, yes, we'll print them for you, Texas Freedom Colonies Project. Just give us your logo and we'll do it. Great, we'll do it. But there's never been the priority on that per se. And keep in mind, we're a university. We're not necessarily in the position to sell you t-shirts to make money. There may be other organizations that emerge in the future that are associated with Texas Freedom Colonies Project. These are all under discussion and in the works. But until that happens, if you want to donate t-shirts, we love you. And you can certainly, again, email us and say, hey, I've got them. I'm here to help. Anything else you want to say about, I guess, swag, Natalie?
If you email me, for the people on this Zoom, if you email me your address, I'll send you a sticker in the mail.
Or stickers.
We do have stickers.
If you got a Juneteenth event coming up, we want to send you stickers. We want to send you note cards.
Yeah, we have postcards. Yeah, we have postcards with our information on them that we want you to hand out.
Mm-hmm. We have paper copies of our surveys. So there's surveys on the Atlas that we use to ask people information about what's going on in their settlement. What do you need? What's the challenges? What's going on? That's our Black Settlement Survey. It's study that we've been doing for years now. And we have that printable, and we can hand that out, and we can, mail that to you as well, or send you links and make sure you have those kind of materials. So all the educational stuff, we want to, and we'll get it to you.
Okay. We've got only about 4 more minutes, Dr. Roberts. So I'm going to kind of give you 2 last questions to answer that I think will kind of round out the evening.
Actually, Hannah, we're going to go ahead, because we had maybe a little glitches and started a little late. We're going to go on at least till about 7:05 with the official program. And I will stay behind to chat with folks, 5 or 10 minutes after that, but my team doesn't have to stay. But I'll stay another, till about 5 after 7, answering questions if need be.
Great. So LaDonna wants to know, how far in advance does an organization need to request your informational kits, or how quickly can I get the information as we move towards the hiatus period and during the hiatus period?
That's a really good question. If you need packets of information, if you're like, I'm going to need 50 note cards and I'm going to need this, that, and the other, get that order in yesterday, because there's a finite availability of those materials in the short term. And the sooner we get your order, the sooner we can prepare it and get it to you. So I would say I wouldn't wait till, I would try to get everything in by June 1. Any request you have, like I want a packet of note cards, I want to give away things at Juneteenth, whatever the case may be, please get those requests in by no later than June 1.
So Rosalind has a question. Have you been in contact with US DOT regarding TxDOT's Freedom Colonies vis-a-vis the White House Executive Order on Equity? And has the Texas Freedom Colonies Project ever thought about partnering with the National Trust for Historic Preservation more directly for funding and collaboration?
It's a great question. I've just reviewed, one of our colleagues, Evan Thompson, has sent us that report on equity from the White House. And that's something that we're going to be reviewing very carefully to seek out how we might situate our work going forward, especially since I'll be much closer to Washington, D.C., which is in part why this move is so good for Texas Freedom Colonies Project. We're very focused on what it means to go national, which is not just about being in every state, but being where the center of power is and making a difference. As it relates to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, we've had a very productive partnership with them thus far. Jennifer, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, so the Texas African American Cemetery Registry was created in support by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. With that grant, we were able to create the registry, or the prototype for the registry, because we do imagine and envision the registry being a mobile app where folks can download the app and conduct cemetery assessments on like a downloadable app. And then it also allowed us to create a strategic plan to create the new Texas Freedom, or what will be the Texas Freedom Colonies Project website. And so with that new website, not only will it repurpose the resources we have on our current website, but it'll also allow us to create a more complex website in terms of the resources and function of the website. So that includes creating a portal space specifically for Texas Freedom Colony descendants to interact with each other, a space for our Adopt a County volunteers to log in and support us. And so yeah, that's the shorthand of the grant in our partnership with the National Trust for Historic Preservation. I think we will all be excited when we get the next grant to continue those project efforts and expand them.
Yes, these are exactly the things that we were able to fund through the National Trust Grant. The National Trust Grant, this particular pool of funds that they made available to us, was from the African American Heritage and Cultural Action Fund, as well as the Mellon Foundation. So the National Trust partnered with those two bodies to provide funding. And with our $50,000 grant, I was able to do, engage in student support, for materials, for travel, for testing, for a consultant to work with us and to work with our descendants to talk about how to improve or develop a future website. So that was given us in 2019. And now we've got to go to the next phase of realizing that, which is another set of partnerships. So if those are things that you're like, hey, I've got ideas about that. I have a funder who's interested. I'd like to work with you on that, Dr. Roberts. We want to hear those things. We'd like you to send us those ideas. We want to support, we want to manifest these things, but it's going to take what? Time and money. And right now we're asking for the benefit of time and of always money, but we all need money, right? But we're most interested right now in just hearing from you. So all of this input is really, really good. We're knowing what your priorities are, what you want to do. This is really good. What else?
So we have a question about your status. Paul wants to know what your status as related to TAMU will be moving forward.
Yeah, that's really interesting. My relationship with the Texas A&M system is under discussion. That's the most that I'm able to say right now about that. I am a tenure track professor. I achieved tenure this year. It will be official as of May once the Board of Regents decides. And then I will be I'm not one of those people that goes to university and teaches a class on the side. I am a full-fledged academic who happens to try to do all of this that I do at the same time. And I very much like being an academic. I like teaching. The pressure to publish is pressure, but I like to publish. So I'm a bona fide professor, folks. And I embrace that. So my status is that I will be a professor, an associate professor at University of Virginia, and I will be the co-director of the Center for Cultural Landscapes at the University of Virginia, through which much of my work that has to do with African American landscape preservation will happen. So what's under discussion with a lot of folks in the Texas A&M system as a whole is ways that we may be able to continue to slowly bridge, the work that I've been doing at this university with what we'll do with partner sites throughout the rest of the country. So everything is under discussion. And I say that not to say that we haven't thought about it or, I don't have any answers. But if you all know something I don't or have other ideas, please send them to me. But right now, everything is a discussion. Anything else?
Yes, we have kind of two final last questions. Okay. The first one is, are any members of this team working on the THC Underrepresented Stories or Communities project? And will the Texas Freedom Colonies project have a person located in Texas once the transition is complete? That's the first question.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of having a person here in Texas, my goal is for that to be the case. We're hoping that we don't have to totally end everything as soon as I leave the university, but things, as you see, are tapering off because we have to put those things in place and we need time to do it. Having a person here in Texas is a goal. How we're going to do that, I have materials and funding and support from my new university. We have ways that we want to continue to work here and partner with Texas Target Communities, which is a way that Texas A&M University serves rural communities. So we have ways that we may continue to partner through that organization. So everything is being figured out. Just to simply say it that way, it's being discussed and figured out. And what was the other question?
So the other component of that question, the last question, sorry. The last question, and I think a good question to end on, is what can the people in this Zoom meeting and others in our community do to support you personally and also the Texas Freedom Colonies project during the transitional period?
That's a super wonderful question. Here's what I would say. First of all, keep in communication with us. Keep in communication with us. And I would also say that we desperately need people to continue to engage with the Atlas and to help support the research we're doing to the Atlas, to support the cemetery registry. And I think when it comes to charting the future, we're going to have some more of these discussions. This is the first one. Some of them may be a little more open and different, but this is just the beginning of our listening sessions. And so I would ask you to continue to be part of our listening sessions. I would ask you to contact me if you have ideas about funding support, that you would say funding support in the subject line, and that you would direct that, towards our Freedom Colonies Project at gmail.com. And so that's That's really simply it. Volunteers, money, and keep on engaging with our platforms and our research. This has been really wonderful. Thank you for your patience and your understanding and your continued engagement as we transition. All I will say is freedomcoloniesproject@gmail.com. Okay? freedomcoloniesproject@gmail.com, and our Facebook page is all the way live and active as I don't know what. So go to our Facebook page and go to TexasFreedomColoniesProject.com, the TexasFreedomColoniesProject.com, our website. So there's lots of ways to get at us, learn from us, and we will see you again and announce another conversation soon. And with that, good night.